So, wow. So the Chronicles was a wrap, and now I feel like the new conversation needs to be a direct address to the queens and kings, and it's got to be broken up on a macro level because it really is a blueprint for you to avoid some of the errors that I've made. When I'm speaking to you guys, I'm not speaking from a place of perfection, rather a flaw of error and realizing where I fell short and the fact that I didn't have a Cliff Notes version of what not to do. I didn't have it. So I hope from my experiences it can give you some guidance, even if it's only what not to do. And you can use that and apply it and tweak it and improve it and make it work for you. But I think the first order of business is to address the queens, because, like I said in one of my original segments, the queen is the foundation. Everything is foundational around the woman, even in the Bible. The way they tried to, have it that Eve was the one that led Adam astray. You know, I see a lot of fallacy with that too. That's a whole separate segment. But in that way, you got to understand what is your purpose. Because if you're not aligned with your creator, you're just going day to day in the wind with no real discipline or purpose for your existence. You're just taking up space essentially. So I'll give you an idea of when I'm saying what's your purpose. I know for me, and I don't know kind of like what point, maybe 12 years ago, I realized my purpose and I'm really coming into it now and applying it. That I'm a champion of the people in that those that can't advocate for themselves, those without a voice, those that don't have the tools or the know how to advocate for themselves, I'm that person that advocates on their behalf. Sort of like a brave heart. And it comes with a burden, but it's what I was built to do. Like that's my purpose. So understanding whatever your purpose is so that you can apply yourself daily toward that. Um, Striking a balance with your purpose. Good times are fine and dandy. And it helps us make it through the difficult times. But do we have a balance to the periods of time when we require complete quiet so that we can act in our purpose, in the intended purpose? Are you able to encourage others to maintain that balance? And not because you have a mouthpiece of gold, but because you could do it by example. Like they actually respect you. Because you live what you're trying to broaden their horizon to see. I have so many notes. I got a legal pad worth of notes. And then queens, your peaceability. Man, because I know like in my roaring 20s, I was belligerent. Zero fucks were given, and all hell would break loose if I felt away. And I thrived off of that. I was usually the catalyst that was causing mayhem. And that's just what it was till I felt better about it. So that was my legacy of that era. And you could almost say that all of the fruit of that era was poisonous fruit because it wasn't from a whole place. I was in a lot of pain at that time. So that's just being honest with yourself and identifying what season of your life are you in, identifying your purpose so that you can figure out how to act in accordance with that. As you allow yourself to become used as a tool, you'll see more blessings. Um, but that reign of terror and horror that I was, wreaking havoc, that was okay to me because I thrived in that setting. So there's people that thrive off fuckery, you know? So you got to be able to figure out, are you one of those people? And you just attract foolishness all the time. And you take an objective, like an eagle eye view, an aerial view, and you'll realize sort of like, oh, this person that's in my life, they always got something going on. There's a person that's more peaceable. They're damn near boring, but they always have peace. And you figure out the balance of the insanity and which side, you would like to present on. Because I realized after the fact that I was harming myself inadvertently. I was harming myself and creating more turmoil than there needed to be. Like a lot of my adversity could have been avoided if I didn't feed into it. Yeah, if I just didn't feed into it. And that affected my ability to have any sort of peace. And those all around me. Because remember, it's a casualty along the sides when all hell breaks loose. So that's why I guard it now. Because I had that terrible 20s phase. And it was a period of time that if I felt away, um, there was just nothing that was going to stop me from making all hell break loose. It was an issue for me for a long time, and it's the reason I'm telling you why now my peace is like on lock and key. I refuse. I don't even interact. I don't entertain it. You know, my loved ones know. I'm caught with that foolishness. She just not in it. And even if I assist in a way of helping them process, kind of like gonna be real short. We're not gonna spend an hour talking about issues. We just not. And your ability to motivate others toward that clarity of thinking and wanting them to be inspired to want that for themselves, because you may not always be around. Those are legacy items. So once you realize your ability to inspire others and yourself, and you're pulling yourself up by your stilettos and creating from nothing opportunities for yourself, um, you're now ready to discuss your mothering capacity because you have that foundation and you're able to create stability and peace for yourself and maintain that. Do you have the tools? Being honest with yourself to effectively mother and nurture and show young people how to become responsible people. You know, just because we're able to doesn't mean that we're supposed to. Are we in a space, like an actual space, to be producing others? You know, you got to be honest with yourself in that capacity. Even if it wasn't afforded to you, even if you didn't have a blueprint in your family, your mother, your grandmother, your aunties, you ain't never had no example of what it should look like. You gotta go find it, seek it out. Because I feel like in this era, there's too much information available of all sorts that you just lack guidance. You have nowhere to look. To say, oh, my whole community, I never saw a family unit of a mom and a dad, and they were able to get through it, and they had a household intact, and they interacted with their kids, and I just never saw this. That's not going to be good enough. It's just not. You got to seek out and build out the information that you need so that you can be successful. Figure it out, what that needs to look like for you, and how you can grow responsible people. People. Um, Being a homemaker. And everybody's not that. Some people are like, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do none of that. I could do these other things, you know. But it's important to know the basics of how to maintain a home. How can you effectively guide, housekeepers and these other individuals if you don't know what it takes to run the household? So that you gotta have a strong head for it, even if it's not something you're willing to execute, so you can guide others in your expectation. Unless you're willing to release all of that energy and power and just let somebody else run it the way they see fit. That too. And then in the hunting capacity, as far as your ability to produce and put food on the floor. Because even in the animal kingdom, the lionesses, the tigresses, they're the hunters, not the males. So your ability to produce, even without a mate, it feeds into your legacy, what you're able to give to children and what you can show them. Yeah, if they're going to be able to make it and sustain themselves. These are legacy items for like generational stability, not the trauma side, but stability in what you're able to contribute and being able to create and maintain a safe haven. That's kind of in conjunction with the peace. Because if you don't know how to create and protect a honeycomb hideout, you're not going to be able to ever keep somebody else safe. It's just not, it's not going to come to pass. I feel like social media has us where we think that everything should go online. That was one of my initial meet and greet episodes where I was like, nah, everything, I don't go online. Don't do that. So, queens, never underestimate the power of being a lady and being discreet. Everything isn't supposed to be shared. Or in the moment when you think you should share it, maybe not even then. When you think it is appropriate, check that twice. That'd be for your safety. People will observe, especially a mate, your ability to keep yourself safe. I mean, I've met people that were like, oh, I enjoy the drama and the foolishness. They look for that. That's a good time to them. That's their idea of. I'm like, oh, wow. I tap out on them because I'm like, Immediately, I see your idea and understanding of what's important is different than mine. Nor do I have the energy or the responsibility to guide you to the light. It's not going to be me, you know? Oh my goodness, there's so many pages, y'all. And your unity within a union. Because you might think you want something and you'd be like, yeah, that's ideal. That's what I need. That's what I want. So you get it and then you be like, damn, I want something else. So being clear with yourself and honest with yourself will keep you from constantly switching directions. And it'll help you be unified with someone else because you're not always switching up. It's not changing. Day to day, it's changing. What you want, your needs, and your ability to meet those for yourself. That is at some point it becomes, just some sort of manic exercise. Every day you're unhappy and it's all over the place what you want and need, and motherfucker jumping through hoops. Ain't nobody reasonable sticking around for the insanity. It's exhausting. So knowing what it is you want, sticking to that, and communicating effectively if there changes so that you make sure you're aligned. His idea might change, and I ask the right question, and I'll be like, ooh, that new direction ain't it. I might have to tap out for this new direction. That. So making sure that you're not making people miserable because you're not sure for yourself. Making yourself miserable, those around you, bitterness, that should have eat you alive. Because I don't be speaking to you guys from a space where I want you to just forgive and forget. I want you to assess and correct that. Don't, nothing just forgive and forget goes away, but you got to assess and correct and absorb responsibility and be accountable for whatever it is that's happening, you know, so that you don't ever just end up a victim. Like being a victim is out. That's out. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. I'm skipping ahead. And then we have a responsibility to be spiritual advisors. So I'm not saying that you gotta be devout and a church person and every time we look up you in Bible study and all these other things, but to have a spiritual balance to your existence and your presence and to have an understanding and respect the higher being. Are you able to look at the bigger picture without being prompted? Are you able to just zoom out and see purpose and find purpose in the exercise? What does your contribution look like to a union? And your ability to explain these lessons to the children so that they also become God fearing. People hear God and religion and they be like, oh, that doesn't count because I'm Muslim or this, or I'm Jehovah's Witness. Formula's all the same. All religion is based around that presence of there being a God or greater being. So it doesn't really matter. It's applied evenly. It always is kind of the same formula. Is a God, there's rules, and are we gonna abide or which side are we gonna live on? And how are we gonna be a testimony to that, to our belief? It's always the same. It varies from religion to religion, but the formula stays the same. And making sure that children are God fearing so that they don't end up leaning toward tangible items for their God. Materialistic in these things, always chasing these things. It's crazy to me because I see and people are like, oh, you should have this, you should have this, and all these things, and it's like, if I'm not clear on myself, be all over the fucking place. Driving all swerving all over all across the road. The society, this, my homie said, so and so would think, you're not gonna do none of that. But it takes a certain discipline and it takes time to develop that strength. You want to develop that in your legacy as part of your legacy and for the children's sake. Have that balance of peace, and have a greater spiritual understanding. Don't keep it entry level. I've studied consciously 3 different religions just so that I don't ever find myself in a space with a lack of understanding. That, and I actually don't practice any of them. I just feel as though, for me spiritually, do what's most right when nobody's looking. That, you know, and that's gotta it. Like, always do what's most right even when nobody's looking. So you're expected to be an advisor of all things. And it could be feast, famine, queens and kings don't get breaks. The royal court doesn't get a break. So it could be feast or famine. But you're going to still be expected to advise, counsel, be clear headed. You got to package and freeze them emotions. Because those emotions leave you blindsided, misguided. Think clearly, think through it, remove the emotions from the exercise, and you won't come up short. You want to be the reason that there's peace and that there's a calmness, even to your interactions in your space. Because being the discord, the drama, the problem, now, mind you, there are people that thrive off of that existence. So hopefully you align with somebody that's with all the fuckery too. They like that shit. But I know, like, for my season of my life where I'm at now, I'm not. I'm not. I'll run from it. It's a detriment. Birds of a feather flock together. So one foolish person, it's usually a bunch of them right behind them. Gotta separate yourself to protect yourself. You're a helper and an active contributor to the unity in the household and the peace and the progress. Not to be, discord, drama, dysfunction. And that's all you can produce. It's like a plant that every time you water it or you replant it, It just keeps dying. At some point, you got to figure out, is it the water? Is it the soil? What is going on here? Lack of light. You got to figure that shit out. So it's the same in your interactions. And if you're a poisonous, toxic type of personality, or you feed into those type of personalities, your peace will radiate from within and it'll resonate with people. People remember like how you make them feel more than they remember the actual exercise. They remember how they felt as it was happening with your interaction. So you're the advisor of all things. You have complete control. No victim. None of that. You have complete control. And you're able to focus and not be all over the freeway. Focus in, zone in, and you'll also in turn be able to refocus your household, refocus your mate, and reconvene without a war. Hey, the initial plan we talked about seems like it's changing, so that you're able to tweak and adjust yourself in your participation. What you willing to be involved in, right? Get that clarification, have those conversations. It'll save you a lot of trauma later. A lot of trauma, a lot of time. And think it through so that it's making sense to you. Do you know what would happen if every time somebody was barking from the rooftop, some drama, some issue, some problem? We would get used to hearing her barking. And when they actually needed us to be responsive, we would be so used to it. It sounded like white noise. We wouldn't even react any differently. So it's the same thing, Queens, with your mate. You always barking, fussing, arguing, contention, going against him, this, that. That don't mean that you're not an independent thinker. It's not what you say, it's how you say it and when you present it, you know? So if you're not in a capacity where you're able to communicate, well, you got to work on that. Because barking all the time, you may need him to listen, and he's unavailable for the exercise because you always making noise. Always a lot of white noise. Always a lot of fussing, complaining, arguing. Some men like that shit. They argue, fuss, fight. They want to make up. Man, I'm just, yeah, that up and down, that roller coaster. It's not Coney Island. I do not need that shit. If I want excitement, I'll go to Six Flags. That we can create excitement for real and not a toxic type of excitement. Um, yeah, keep the belligerent outbursts. Keep that shit to yourself. That's that package and freeze of those emotions. It's unstable. Makes him unstable. And then your significant other will actually stay present. So when you do have something constructive to contribute, they're actually available and they're not inundated with all these other things where they're overwhelmed, exhausted, or just running in general. I see these interactions, I'll be like, wow, they just be running. Whether it's traffic, socializing, just away, just trying to get away. They're trying to find their peace and they don't realize that some of it is right with them. The reason why they can't find this peace all over the place. You'd be like, wow, I never knew that person had significant other. Well, you don't see them. So they be running from their ass. That that would make people, not even just a mate, want to be close to you. hmm Always speaking, even though it's legitimate, will fall on deaf ears. You got to calculate when you speak what you speak on and the way that you present and like communicate that information. You know, can't be sloppy. The next one we have is reminding ourselves, queens, that we always have to be prepared for the response. So remember I just said it's not what you ask, it's how you ask? Yeah, it's how you ask, but it's how you receive too. Because there's a lot of questions that people ask and then they get the information. Somebody's truthful and they still don't act in accordance with understanding that they got the message. Like, no, that means you're supposed to adjust yourself. So you acting like, what they said is not something that you want to hear. It's just not a useful exercise. Waste of time. You got to be able to cope with truth. That's being honest with yourself. What you're willing to handle. What you're willing to be second to. You'd be surprised what people would just tell you if you just ask. And asking things like, do you have a significant other? Who has your heart? Are you God fearing? You'd be surprised. Somebody could be occupied not even with another person. It could be the pursuit of money. And they spend 20 of their 24 hours a day doing that. So you got to understand you're going to be second to that. And are you okay with that? Because they gave you that information before you got too far along. So you got to understand, is that something you're willing to cope with? Do you require a lot of attention? Are you hands on? Or do you have enough stuff going on for yourself that it's cool? When we align, we align. Keep it clean. Be honest with me. I'm going to keep it clean with you. Cool. We going. And don't rescind that shit. You can't say it and then be like tripping in 90 days. You're tripping now. You're not happy. Selling a lemon. You can idealize this whole scenario, Queens, of what you want it to be and how you hope it would end up, without realizing that this person's not scheduled for that season in your life. You've grown to another place, or you see yourself ending up in a space that they just can't even fathom. They're not, they're not here for it. And that's when you gotta assess and be honest with yourself what you're willing to cope with for how long. Because you might like the 20s version of me where I was tripping, I was wild. We're gonna get it in, we're gonna do all of the above. But you got acclimated to that. And now in my refined version of me, you're like, damn, that's boring. Ain't no excitement in that shit. See? So, and I could have never even forecasted that I would grow to this. But now that I'm here, I know that there's certain people that I cannot integrate into my current situation. It's not going to be conducive for me to be successful. And with that, the next point is victim. So making sure that you take responsibility, because always being a victim and these things happened and so and so did something to me and I came up short because of this and all these other things, it just it gives too much power to the other person. I refuse to give that measure of power to somebody. Hell no. Like, I need complete ownership of my success and my failures, all of it, how I arrived there. Oh, I trusted you and you burnt me. Why did I trust you? What was it in me that made me think that you were somebody that was trustworthy of my trust? That so you will feel like shit at first as you realize your poor decisions and the role you played in your own successes and failures, and then you'll begin to feel empowered. Something else will kick in, and you'll start to actually feel empowered by the information, and you'll apply it and use it so that you don't get fucked up next time. That and avoid those feelings, those misgivings. And then we have the ability to simply refuse. It's interesting to me how people feel as though they can't just say no. I don't understand why. Yeah, maybe it's peer pressure. I don't know. People feel like they can't just say no and step away. But that's available to you. That's always an option. That's number one option. It's non. Refuse to participate. I'll probably tell you no before I ever say yes. That. So acknowledging how you've been wrong previously, and applying that information as your Cliff Note version of your blueprint of how to avoid being in that same scenario. Because if you've had 10 bad relationships, at some point, you got to be able to assess maybe you had a contribution to why it was all fucked up. That, or you was short or deficient in some area that you just previously missed it, so that you're able to improve your situation. But I refuse to give that range of power over me, over my existence, my happiness, my misery. I refuse to give it to somebody, anybody. Um, and then there's needs to be an understanding to this platform that this content is not designed for everybody. There's a reason why you never hear me say the word nigga in my interaction and in all of this vlogging that's going on. Because the reason for that is my understanding is that a nigga is a person of ignorance. And it doesn't matter what race you are. So there has to be a point where you decipher and you use like your discernment to be like, this content ain't for everybody. You see what I'm saying? Because a fool has no interest. A fool wants to be entertained, it's a constant party, and that's how they're thriving and moving right now. They have no, they won't see the value in it. They're not gonna find value in it. So it's not for everybody. Ain't no twerk off gonna happen, no dance contest. We not gonna do no challenge. We not doing none of that. That is not this. That's not what this is for. We got plenty of that. There's plenty of things you can click on. Go find that. Market's saturated with that shit. But it's available everywhere. Doesn't mean that it should be ingested. That's like saying, oh, there's rat poison, so I figured I would taste that because it was there, it was available. Come on. That's empowerment and taking responsibility over your success or your failure. This content is not curated for that knucklehead. It doesn't really care and wants to be entertained. It's just not for that. This is for the thinkers and the doers. Take responsibility for all of your failures, your ambitions. Man, absorb that. It makes you feel whole, and it removes the part of being able to point at somebody to say, oh, this is the reason why. Help you cope. Long term, it is empowering over your overall being and over your existence. For queens, we have many hats to wear. Look, long story short, we gotta be fucking superheroes. You see what I'm saying? Superheroes with no cavalry. There is no backup till you find your king, the person you're appointed to be with. So you gotta have a mastery of that, and you gotta be able to know what's non-negotiable. And knowing spiritually, knowing how to be peaceable, knowing how to hunt, knowing how to protect your home, knowing how to protect yourself, all of those things will be applied. Because I kid you not, even though he may never tell you, a real king is watching how you move to assess if you're even somebody that can integrate into his program. For real. You're entertaining, you're free with it. Everybody could do that. Yeah, let's do it. You pull up, you do this. Folks coming in and out your door, you're home. Folks knocking at the door. He watching. He watches that. He's paying attention. He'll probably never say it to you, but that's what this blueprint is for.